In the Luhansk region, the Ukrainians continued developing their counteroffensive operation. Over the last several days, in an attempt to cut off the Russian group in the area of Tavlzenka from supplies, the Ukrainians launched a tactical encirclement operation from Kupiansk and have already achieved significant success, and if last time they have just started assaulting Russian positions in Petropavlivka and Kislivka, then today, the Ukrainians established control over multiple crucial Russian positions, significantly broadened their attack and finally reached Orlyanka. And here is how they did it. As you remember, the operation started by reducing Russian firing points and control over the fields. The geography of this region is quite complicated. As you can see, there are a lot of field ditches that allow the Russians to establish multiple defense lines. However, some parts still remain vulnerable. The ditches that are parallel to the axis of attack necessarily have only one point from which they can control the attackers, making this position very vulnerable to artillery fire. The artillery can easily cover the spear of the ditch to make sure that everyone there is dead. That is why on the first day of the Ukrainian offensive operation, the Ukrainians have been slowly pushing the Russians towards their secondary defense line. Simultaneously, the Ukrainians launched their attack towards Kislivka. They established their positions in the ditches and started to storm this agglomeration of towns. After achieving significant success, the Ukrainians continued developing their offensive further and opened several more lines of attack. The first target became Vilshane. As you can see, the ditches and tree belts stretch along the northern group of settlements. Developing offensive operations towards Petropavlivka further without securing the flanks would be a catastrophe because the Russians near Vilshane would be able to shoot the Ukrainians in the back. That is why the Ukrainians assaulted Vilshane. They applied the same tactic. They attacked the spears, which in this region very rapidly opened access to the southern part of the settlement. By the end of the day, the left flank was completely secured because the Ukrainians managed to establish their positions along the southern part of the settlement. The control over it is split, it is considered a gray zone, but it is not important. What is important is that immediately after securing the flank, the Ukrainians doubled down on attacking Petropavlivka. As of now, I cannot tell how much they moved further, but given that the Ukrainians have finally launched their attack on Orlyanka, it is clear that the Ukrainians pushed the Russians far enough to securely move along the ditches and tree belts, leading to Orlyanka. The second target of the broad attack became Tabyivka. This was a logical step since the Ukrainians already control Pyskane. The situation here had many unexpected turns. As you remember, the main purpose of this particular attack was to fix Russian forces. Nonetheless, the Ukrainians overwhelmed Russian forces with fire and managed to push them out of Kislivka. This turned out to be a mistake. Russian forces in Tabyivka managed to repel the attack, which means that the Ukrainian advance towards Kislivka put them into a pocket. Both parties understood it, and fierce battles broke out the next day. The Ukrainians tried to develop their offensive towards Kotlyarivka and simultaneously breached the Russian defense in Tabyivka to gain tactical advantage and prevent the imminent Russian counterattack, while the Russians regrouped and unleashed everything they had on the Ukrainians in Kislivka. The Ukrainians realized they were taking too much heat for a supporting attack and retreated to more stable positions in front of the settlement. The situation seems to have stabilized, and the Ukrainians have already moved additional forces to Petropavlivka to develop their offensive further. The next logical step would be to take Orlyanka and move towards Mykolaiivka. If you are against the invasion of Ukraine and want to support the work that I am doing, consider making a purchase in the online store UA Supporter. Here you can find a lot of products with Ukrainian symbols, to not only show your support for this channel, but also for Ukraine.